All right, we're almost there. I'm almost ready. Just a little more time here. I think I might do it without the headphones, actually. I'm semi-pleased, even though I didn't really fix my hair. I just washed it and put some gel on it. I'm semi-pleased with how it looks. So I'm probably, right now I've got 3 people watching me. Who's on? Do you want to declare yourselves? Declare yourself, sir. Hold on, let me get this off. Trying to get this comment to go away. Go away. How do I get these comments? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So let me get situated here. We'll go for longer than 30 minutes. I always say that. It's not gonna be longer than an hour, but I think we'll probably end up at when I actually get rolling here with, with what I'm gonna say, 45 minutes. I want to talk about 3 things, and basically so that I can get 3 10 to 15 minute videos out of them. I've already made half of the Marilyn Manson video that I want to put out next. I made another promo video, not a scary one this time, but a sort of a short promo video. And so, but I need to get some commentary down for that video, and then so I'm going to talk about the Marilyn Manson stuff, including Chloe Sevigny, by the way. Marilyn Manson stuff. Try to get some cool sound bites or whatever, and then I want to talk about 2 things related to the Charlie Kirk stuff. The first, I want to go ahead and try to clarify my thoughts on Erica Kirk, because I realize, like, well, of course, it's kind of like the Deb Jackman thing in a way that, like, I realize, this woman's a grieving widow, and to a number of people, she is like a national hero now, and so forth. And so I realize that anything that's even perceived as criticism of her, and I actually don't have criticism of her. This might surprise y'all based on some of the things that you've seen me post about her. If you've been looking at my Twitter, my Instagram, I actually don't have the criticisms of Erica Kirk. It's to do with the philosophy that parts of the philosophy that I think that she and some others on the right espouse when it comes to women. Not all of which I disagree with, but there's some things that I do. And so anyway, and I wanted to clarify some things that I said about her, and speak a bit more on that, and about this. I think this kind of confusion on the right, among some on the right, about women and their place in society. And look, I totally agree, and I have been talking about this for a while now as well, that the left has a ton of confusion. If we're going to talk about in a very generalized way, and again, when we talk about the left or the right, we're not talking generally about most people on those sides. We're talking about like the loudest social media and political voices, right? So I want to make that clearer than ever, because I don't like the way that some people have been referring to the killer of Charlie Kirk as they. But we'll talk about that in a little while. But I want to talk about Erica Kirk, and then I want to also pull back and talk about some things that people have been saying the last few days related to the Charlie Kirk stuff since my last video. I want to talk about where I'm at on the censorship issue, quote unquote censorship issue, and also that memorial. What did I think of it? So 15 minutes, I think. Hopefully I get started here in a minute. 15 minutes for each of those is what I'm going to be shooting for. And I will try to look at your comments if any of the 4 of you get brave. Look at your comments if you have any, and people will join. We'll probably get up to like 20, 30 people. So let me just say, to a couple of more minutes before I get into the main part of what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing it on my tiny channel here, where I'm only going to have, we lost one. Damn, we lost one. Just 3 of us now, huh? But why am I doing it on this tiny channel? What's that about? And so here's the thing. I have developed over the past year, it sucks too, I have developed some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it. Oh, by the way, that is my significant other, who will be coughing, and he's watching TV and stuff. There will just be some noise from the other room. And I could tell him to shut up or go upstairs, but I don't want to. So it's just a YouTube video, right? So anyway, I don't know if you want to call it YouTuber's block. Let me get a little straighter here, actually, on the screen. I am wearing the same outfit that I wore in my last video, just because I'm going to be doing a Marilyn Manson video, and I feel like this is my most Marilyn Manson-ish outfit. So anyway, and I got some good comments from it last time. People were like, "Oh, that's cool, that's cool." So anyway, oh, there's my makeup bag that's sitting on that couch and ruining the picture. One second. Can't have that. It's got all my my Coke in it. It's just a little Nick Rekieta joke there. No offense to him either. Some of you know, you might know that Nick is, I'll say, a casual YouTuber, Rumbler, whatever, friend of mine. But I've never had any bad experiences with him, and I had him on my live stream, one of my live streams, actually not too long ago. But anyway, and he's doing well by all accounts. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what you want to call it. It's like if it's like a YouTuber's block or a stage fright or something. But I seem to have developed in the last year an issue where I find it, and it was not always this way. It's just been the last year. I find it really difficult now to record without an audience, even if it's just a couple of people, even if it just dwindles down to one. I find it very difficult to record without an audience now. And it's not because I can't come up with things to say or I can't say them, but it's because it's so tempting when it's a pre-record, when it's not live, to just say, "Oh, that wasn't good enough," or, "Oh, I think that was a little awkward. That's not exactly how I wanted to say it," and to go and to push stop and go back and do it again. And I think I've developed some kind of an OCD or something, OCD response to doing this stuff, where I find it difficult once I start recording to just go with it. I keep having the urge to like stop and go back. And so it takes me a long time when I don't have an audience to really get started or to not do that, right? And I wasn't always that way, but I am now. And so but when I have an audience, it's not like I can tell you, okay, let's stop and let me repeat the last 5 minutes or whatever, right? You just got to go with it and do it, and mistakes be damned, and just edit them out later. So that's why I do this, and I'm doing it on my small channel because I don't want I don't want thousands of people to see the raw version of this, right? With all the sidetrack observations and the ums and the uhs and all that stuff, right? And so, sorry, I'm getting messages too, which I don't mind, but let me turn it. I thought I'd turned the sound down. So yeah, so this tiny channel, I used to use this channel for other things. I tried to start a second legitimate channel, and I was hoping to really grow this one, but at this point in my life, it's really just, it's too much effort right now to try to start another channel. I can never really get it off the ground because YouTube has such a bias against new channels. And so I would spend all this time when I was really trying to get this Contrarian Corner channel going. I would spend all this time on some videos, and then I would post them, and I'd be back to getting, 10, 20, 30, 100 views. And I just didn't have the patience. I'm like, nah, I'm just going to post it on my main channel where I know I'll get more views. So anyway, whatever. Woe is me, right? The life of YouTuber is so hard. Okay. Yeah. So Daniela, look, someone has come forward. What's up, Daniela? Do you want to tell us anything about yourself? Do you want to tell us how long have you been a viewer of mine? And where you're from, if you want to, where you're from, and tell me, I guess, since you're speaking up, do you want to choose the first topic? What are you most interested in? We'll put it that way. Are you most interested in hearing Marilyn Manson observations and updates, or Erica Kirk, or just general Charlie Kirk observations? So you get to decide. Look, we got 6 people here too. Welcome, everyone. And again, like I said at the beginning, this is going to end up going longer. It always does, but I'm about to start talking. I'm really actually like doing the monologues, and I'm going to spend 15 minutes on each topic. So we'll be looking at 45 minutes. 2022, Daniela says. Awesome. Well, this might be the first time we've interacted. So hello, and thanks for being one of the 6 people watching this. Do you have a preference for topic, something that you are interested in of the 3 things that I mentioned there? I will say, while she's thinking, I'm disappointed. I dyed my hair because I was getting a ton of gray, which nothing wrong with it, but it's just not the look that I ultimately wanted for YouTube, for my videos. I was getting a ton of gray and I dyed my hair and damn it, it's not showing up like I wanted to. First of all, you can still see some of the gray, and it's not like I'm embarrassed or whatever. It's just, I spent time dyeing my hair. You can still see some of the gray, and it's not nearly as dark on camera as it is in person. In person, y'all, my hair looks almost black. And I even posted on Instagram when I was trying to decide what hair dye to buy. Some of you brunette ladies who dye your hair, you'll know what I'm talking about. I have this eternal struggle, this quandary of whether to choose dark brown. No, what is it? Yeah, dark brown or black brown. Dark brown or black brown. And ladies, some of you dye your hair, brunettes, you may know that the issue here is that the light brown or the dark brown doesn't quite give you the drama that the black brown does. Like people look at you and the color just kind of, when you have the black brown or even something dark or even a black, it just really like makes you like pop out, right? Like you can see that with Marilyn Manson's wife, Lindsay. She's had all kinds of different colors over the years. They all look great. But right now she seems to be doing a very dark black brown. It looks so great on her. So I wasn't wanting to go personally. My skin tone, I don't wear something that dark well. I've done it before. I've even done like pitch black before. It's dramatic, but it's not flat. It's not the most flattering to me. And so I was trying to decide between the dark brown or the black brown. Point is, my hair looks really dark in person right now, and you don't see this gray. And damn it, it's not transferring to the video image. So I'm going to have to, I guess, dye it again. All right. Anyway, that's isn't that fascinating? Daniela says, I'm a Marilyn Manson fan, but now I'm interested in your views of Charlie Kirk topic. My favorite videos are your philosophy and politics theme. Oh, well, that is sweet because so few people actually see those because the algorithm doesn't drive those. Okay. So let's start with And I will have to take just a quick 5-minute break in a little while, or something that I'm supposed to do that only take a minute or so. Okay. What did I think of the Charlie Kirk memorial? Now, as some of you know, I am politically right now in my life, I consider myself slightly right of center, and I have some eclectic views. I consider myself strongly libertarian. And so because I've been doing the Me Too stuff, the anti-Me Too stuff for so long, a lot of people, I think, have the idea that I was more to the right than I am. And so when this Charlie Kirk tragedy happened, when he was murdered, the first couple of days, I had nothing but, I was expressing nothing but my empathy for his family and that it was a tragedy. And I was even trying to defend him online and his reputation against some people who were caricaturing him as this hateful character, spewing all this hateful stuff. And he was a bigot who was slandering different groups of people, etc. Right. And so for the first couple of days, I was very much not on the side. Let me put it this way. I was almost exclusively interested in memorializing him, empathizing with those mourning him, and defending him, right? But what happened was I saw all of these conservatives or not all, I saw a number of conservatives and libertarians online who up to this point for the last 15 years had promoted such an expansive view of free speech. And by expansive, I mean not just talking about what the government allows, but the degree to which people feel free to express their feelings and opinions without worrying that there will be severe life-altering consequences, such as being fired from their job, visited upon them, right? And so because the censorship, as a number of you know, the censorship for the last 15 years and the cancel culture and the repression of ideas has mostly come from the left. I mean, it just has. Then I really believed that the right was really strong on free speech, ideologically strong, philosophically strong on free speech in a way that the left was not. This was something that I would always point to when I would explain to people why I consider myself more right than left of center. I would say, for example, The right promotes free speech and believes in an expansive view of free speech, whereas the left believes in, cancel culture, et cetera, right? And so it just really upset me to see people, not only people saying that people should be fired from their jobs for popping off on Twitter and expressing some degree of satisfaction over Charlie Kirk's death, as heinous as those opinions are and that expression is. That there was this feeling now, very popular among a lot of people I know and respect and look up to. There was this feeling now that these people needed to be fired from their job and excommunicated really from society, and that they needed to feel all these other consequences. You had Elon Musk, and I talked about this in my last angry videos, so I'm not going to revisit it all here. But you had Elon Musk, who was retweeting a Florida congressman who was saying, basically putting out a call to his constituents to rat out their fellow citizens for talking shit about Charlie Kirk, or saying extreme things, such as in some way celebrating or gloating over or expressing satisfaction with his murder. That he wanted to know who these people were, and he was going to, if they were students, he was going to get their student funding yanked. If they had jobs, he was going to see if he could get them fired, if he could get their government benefits taken away, et cetera, et cetera. And then this dude that Elon Musk, this congressman that Elon Musk was retweeting, and that he put 100 next to, right, to signify that he agreed. This guy then says explicitly, quote, "We need to expel these people from polite society." Expel or remove, but the wording was that clear and explicit and harsh that basically these people need to just be excommunicated from society. And so that really, really bothered me, because I felt like it was the right, it's not the hypocrisy that bothers me so much. It's annoying, but we are all hypocrites in various ways. What really bothered me, besides the injustice of it, was that I felt like the right was giving up one of the most attractive things about itself, that it had been so strong on the last 15 years. Now, I know that some people would say it's not been strong the last year with the Israel-Palestinian war crisis, and that in fact it's been the right that's been repressing student speech and student protests on campus. And that's a really extensive argument, and I don't want to get into that. But just let's say in general, the right has been strong on this issue. And so just to see, and I understand the outrage and the sadness of Charlie Kirk's murder, and I understand that it burns people up to see other people celebrating it in any way, or even to say that he deserved it or he had it coming or what have you. I know, but it really bothered me to see the right turning on that. And then, as I've said before, what also really disturbed me is to see how it began to sort of expand this definition of unacceptable speech, because it started off as being just that we were saying what was unacceptable was just people celebrating the murder. But then it seemed that people were getting in trouble, were getting suspended from their jobs, and were getting attacked not just for it, but for saying things more along the lines of, well, he had it coming with the extreme stuff that he was putting out there. To me, then once it became an issue of, you can't criticize this guy, or you can't suggest that maybe he was saying unacceptable things that might have attracted nutcases to commit violence. Once we're saying that's unacceptable speech, then to me, that's even more problematic. And then you had the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing. Now, I've been arguing, my significant other has been arguing with me about this, because he says that Jimmy Kimmel did not get fired because of the government FCC chair's threats on that show that he went on, where he basically declared that the FCC was going to start looking into situations like Jimmy Kimmel, because there was power they could exert there. There were measures they could take. They could basically punish these stations for and these shows, right? They could punish them, take them off the air, what have you. I know some people say that was not why Jimmy Kimmel got suspended or fired or whatever's happened. I don't know his status now. It's in limbo, right? But I know some people say, nah, that wasn't it. It was just that you had these network executives who realized the political winds have changed, and what he said was now unacceptable to the audience, and they just exercised their own freedom as business people to cut him off. Well, I don't think so. I think you had that explicit threat of sorts by the FCC chair when he went on, what was it, the Benny Johnson show, and then you had almost immediate action there. So to me, that's another concerning thing. So anyway, I don't want to rehash all that. I'll probably edit some of this out in the video, but that's the backdrop to all of this, and that's why if I've been upset, I've been upset this week. Now, there was a new twist in things with the memorial service. I made some people angry today, and I didn't look. I kept it up there so people could see my apology. I did not use the best phrasing, and I'm not trying to like grovel here or whatever, like Chloe Sevigny when people came after her for the Manson thing. But I did not use the best language. But the memorial service, to me, it did come across a lot of it more like a political rally. And of course, I know Charlie Kirk was a political guy, and he was killed performing what he saw to be his political mission. And I get it. People have the right to do whatever kind of memorial service they want. But let's get real about the fact that this was not designed just to be a memorial service. It had turning point. Look what was all over the backdrop of that thing. You had the Turning Point logo. That was also that memorial service. It was an advertisement for Turning Point. And it was I think it was really an attempt an attempt at political outreach to the American people. And there were people who were giving very political speeches. It wasn't just Trump. And again, they totally have the right to do that. But here's what I'm saying. If you're going to do that, if you're going to make this memorial event also, at least in part, a political rally and an attempt for Turning Point to recruit basically more Americans, then you cannot say then, oh, well, you can't criticize or you can't examine more closely some of the messages that we sent out at this thing because it was just a memorial, guys. It was just a memorial. So we can't take issue with anything that was said. We can't criticize in any way any of the speakers. We can't raise some questions about some of the ideas that were promoted, some of the phrasing, because it was just a memorial. Just leave them alone. They're just grieving. Leave them alone. Well, I'm sorry, but that thing was clearly not designed to be just a private memorial. It was not. And it was a giant stadium event. So with that in mind, there were some things that I'm just, when I look at it, and it's just me personally, rubs me the wrong way. But as a slightly right of center libertarian, but someone who has some concerns about the way things have been going on the right, obviously the ultimate concern is that this dude was killed. Charlie Kirk was a very good guy, a great guy by all accounts. It was tragic. It was terrible. But the right is responsible for how they react to that. And they're responsible for not letting themselves get pulled down to a level that should be beneath them, or a level of hypocrisy, right? So that's why I would say with this free speech issue. But there were some things about the memorial that to me were just personally kind of like a bit questionable. And it wasn't so much the fireworks. It was things like, it seemed like, not with Erica Kirk. I know she said she forgives Tyler Robinson. But it did seem like with a number of the speakers, there's still this idea that's being promoted online on the right that they killed Charlie Kirk. And that this is a flashpoint. The death of Charlie Kirk, the murder of Charlie Kirk, is a flashpoint in this battle between the right and the left. And I just think that it is problematic, to say the least, to take a huge group of people, our fellow citizens, many of whom are still in the political center. They're not all people on the left or Antifa. That is still the minority. And like I've said before, I was in academia for many years, and so I knew a lot of left-wingers with extremely leftist progressive views, and none of them were violent or crazy or celebrating this guy's death. There were some, yes, who were saying that, well, he was putting out rhetoric and ideas out there that were problematic to a degree. He brought it upon himself. And I understand that's offensive to people. But that is not an opinion even shared by most Democrats, most on the left. And so to keep talking about this idea that they killed him, and I understand people say, well, it's the rhetoric, the fact that the left has been calling the right Nazis for years and years, and have been talking about the right and their views as a kind of an existential threat to this country. Yes, there, but we have maintained, we on the right have been maintaining for many years that words do not equal violence, and that words and expression are and should remain separate and sacrosanct unless you are explicitly inciting someone to violence, unless someone got on their program, their YouTube channel, and said, we need to do whatever. And I just have to say, there are a hell of a lot of people who vote Democrat in our country who consider themselves on the left who are not on the far left. So, what do you think that it does? How do you think it in any way helps the right to recruit or convince or change the minds, hearts and minds, as they would say in Vietnam or in Afghanistan and Iraq? How does it in any way help to convert people or change hearts and minds to the right to be using language like that, basically accusing all on the left of killing Charlie Kirk? It's not accurate. And it's not even effective. If we're just talking about like basic considerations of what works, of efficacy, it's just not an effective stance for the right. But, on the other hand, there was a lot of talk, I know, of forgiveness, at least with Erica Kirk and some others. And I'm not saying this was a major component, but I guess what I'm saying is I really hate for this thing to become for this political moment that we're in, and the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I really hate for it to become any more of a tribal us versus them, almost like a gladiatorial sports event than it already is. And already people, so and myself included, on at times, already people are so caught up in this, so passionately angry at other people. They're spouting off all kinds of extreme rhetoric on social media and getting clicks for it. And I just feel like a memorial service, there was an opportunity there to make it look a little bit less like the political event that it was, the political rally that it was. But, it is what it is. And I understand, again, this guy was killed. People are in mourning, they're in shock, they're in pain. And so I'm not expecting them to do everything that I want with their memorial service. But that was just my feeling. Now, I have a couple more things I want to say. I want to talk a bit about my comment that offended a number of people about Christian fundamentalism, evangelical Christianity, and I did use some bad phrasing on that. So I want to take 5 minutes. I've got to go do this thing now. Pauses for 5 minutes. When I come back and take 5 minutes, I'm going to unpack that. I'm going to talk about why I apologized, what I actually meant, where I'm coming from on that critique, the evangelical thing, and then we'll move on. I'll talk about Erica Kirk, and then we'll finish up with Marilyn Manson. So we still got 3 hanging on. What's up? If you need to go, no problem, but I will be back in 5 minutes and we will go from there. Thank you. All right, we got 2 on. God bless the 2 of you that are still left. So, I'm gonna try to pick up the pace just a little bit with things. Um, all right, I have no problem, I have no beef, no issue. People may not believe this with Erica Kirk. I really don't. She seems like, by all accounts, just like Charlie Kirk, a really nice woman, good woman. She's obviously very intelligent, very successful. I mean, she, by all accounts, she has made it. And then she had this horrible, terrible, unfair, absurd, awful tragedy happen to her. And no amount, I totally know that no amount of future career success or money or influence or anything is going to ever come close to making up for losing someone that you have that kind of a loving, close partnership with. It's just, and losing that person as a father for your children. There's just nothing, there's just no way around that. And I have watched in the last few days, I have watched a number of clips of her, and I've tried to watch some more extensive sections of her podcast and discussions that she had on her podcast with Charlie, and about not just about marriage, but God and women's place in the world. And it's not like I think that she's full of all kinds of shit or has really dangerous, pernicious, ideas that need to be stamped out or anything like that. Most of what I heard, I agreed with, and I thought it was good advice. I mean, she was even talking practically about the need for women to take care of them, their physical selves, their bodies. And she's made some lighthearted remark about, you don't have to be a beauty queen. And of course, that's a reference right to her as Miss Arizona. And anyway, and like there was just a lot of like down to earth and thoughtful observations and so forth. So I don't have an issue with her. I There are certainly some things that I would disagree on, and that's just a matter of her coming from an evangelical right-wing Christian perspective, and this is what I grew up with. I grew up in East Texas in a Southern Baptist church, and I was born again, and my family and everybody knew we're conservatives, and I was very conservative for a long time. And so I see a lot of, by the way, there is a lot of value in that lifestyle. And again, I'm not trying to paint it as necessarily inferior to others or as crazy or as whatever, right? And if that is what comes across on social media, then I do apologize. What people detect on social media, however, is an understanding that there is definitely a negative, I don't want to use dramatic words like dark, I would say dark side, but there's a definite negative side to that belief system and that way of viewing women. And I feel like this was something that for a lot of people was a big turnoff during the George W. Bush years, when evangelical Christianity was such an obvious aspect of his governance and his philosophy, and a number of the people around him, and which is their right and everything. But that, in some ways, that had disastrous consequences that I won't go into, even getting us, I think, into some wars, or a war in particular we didn't need to be in. But long story short, at that point in my life, I was going through a phase too, where I was reading about the dark side of the history of Christianity, and I decided that I was not going to be a Christian anymore. But I have a profound respect for Christianity. I think it's a net gain for society, and I do believe in God, even though I'm often very angry at him for the state of for the state of what it has created. But I do believe in God, and I do think that for a lot of people, they need an established religion to connect with their spiritual higher self. And I've seen that in members of my family, and they would say, well, no, we're just connecting with it because it's the truth. But I just would say openly and charitably that I do recognize that most people need a structure, a formal structure of some kind, and a set of beliefs and a community to have that communion and relationship with God and that spiritual side. So again, I'm not anti-Christian. I'm not even necessarily anti everything or most things about evangelical Christianity, but I have seen the dark side. And so I think that I think that because that is such a strong part, apparently, of Erica Kirk's life, and she's taught seminars on biblical womanhood. She's getting her PhD at Liberty University, which is a Jerry Falwell's school, right? That he founded. And I'm not saying it's a bad school or they don't learn, smart shit there or whatever. I'm not even saying that, but I'm just saying that she is about to. Let me put it this way: Erica Kirk is about to become a very influential, powerful woman. And you can see, even though I thought that her speaking style was kind of stilted or not stilted, but kind of melodramatic, and it seemed stagey, but whatever, that could just be my bias. But I think there's a lot of genuine emotion there. But she is like, you could see it at that memorial service. She is a force. She's going to be a force. And she and Turning Point, they're going to have a huge audience. They're going to have the ear of the nation, so to speak. And she has, and she's spoken about this and written about this. She has, and in general, a lot on the right have a very conservative view of women and women's place, at least officially. Maybe they don't live it, but at least officially. And a very evangelically Christian perspective on the world. And so what I'm saying, I guess, is that, and I said in my social media post, is that I'm seeing a lot of people using Erica Kirk then as an exemplar for this old ideal of womanhood that was not feminist. It wasn't focused on career, and it wasn't focused on personal ambition, getting out in the man's world. It should be, and there are a number of people on the right, as you know, who don't even believe that women should have the vote. And look, I understand a certain frustration with how women historically have voted, but you just can't deny women the vote and these kinds of basic freedoms as adult human beings. And I know that that's not a common view on the right, but it is something that is commonly and openly discussed as something that could almost be like a viable option. And so when I see people posting things on Twitter like Erica Kirk has just killed feminism for good. Did y'all see that? And this was what I was responding to in some of my tweets. Someone posted a picture of her at that memorial service, looking beautiful and also looking like strong and intelligent and all of that, right? Like some kind of like almost like warrior goddess. Like, I see the appeal to a number of people. I see it. I'm not denying it. But when you see a guy post that photo of her at the podium there, and then he writes, Erica Kirk has just destroyed feminism for good, and that gets 10 million views, views, and all these people celebrating it, and it's like, we have to be honest about Erica Kirk's biography and the fact that she actually is an exemplar of the goals and aims of classical and 1960s feminism. And this is going to turn off a bunch of my audience for me to say what I'm about to say. But while I have a huge problem with modern day victim-oriented feminism, and this is why I have been for 5 years, almost 5 years, spending most of my time on social media, critiquing it, fighting it. While that is the case, I also think that there is a lot of good that came for women from classical and even 1960s feminism. And people just have to deal with this. Sorry, this is my view. And I just have to say, I don't come to this view from reading too many feminist books in college or something like that. Yes, there are certain books that I do think are enlightening and culturally significant. One of them you probably heard of, The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, speaking of 1960s feminism. And she has in it all of these interviews, because this was in the 1950s were really the apex of the quote unquote cult of the housewife. And that's not my term. That's just a term that's been used. And this ideal of separate spheres, totally separate spheres for men and women. Men had come back from the war, post-World War II society. There was so much prosperity, et cetera, et cetera. And so there was really this idea that, and also there was a real increase in technology for the home, like washing machines and things of that nature. There was a real fascination with the idea of women not only staying home and nurturing and focusing on the family, but women creating a kind of a haven of domesticity for men when they would come home. And again, I'm not blaming anyone for this or whatever. These are just cultural things that occur. And I'm not even saying it was all bad or that all women hated this. But when you read The Feminine Mystique, it is story after story. It's just interviews with women, all these different women, interviews where, and they're all housewives, and where so many of them say, I'm supposed to be totally happy with this, right? Like I have a husband, I have an amazing husband, I have children, I have this nice house, I have a washing machine, I have cocktail parties, I do PTA, whatever. I'm supposed to, like, this is the dream. I'm living the dream. Why do I feel like there's there's more that I can do in this world, even beyond this? Why do I feel like there's this part of me that needs to be challenged and fulfilled? Why do I so crave having adult conversations and not just conversations, with the toddlers I'm raising and stuff, right? And this may seem to all of us as something unremarkable. Well, duh, yeah, motherhood is hard, yeah. But this was really in the when this book came out, especially when you think about the 1950s leading up to this was really almost a revolutionary idea, just to have all of these women sort of whispering. Betty Friedan called it the problem that has no name or should not be spoken. I can't remember which one, but these women whispering, like almost like saying, like, what's wrong with me, that this is not all, that I want other parts of myself to be fulfilled. And so I'm not attacking stay-at-home moms or anything like that. I'm just saying that there is a caricature that I hope that, and it's particularly popular among some traditionalists on the right. And then we get into all this trad stuff and like this neo-trad phenomenon. There is this caricature of women that's taking hold with some, that like we really just are these like just completely nurturing, creatures that really just want to keep having, it's like when I went on Tim Pool and he didn't understand the concept that women might not want to have 15 kids like in the old days. And like there's this sort of caricature of this kind of traditional woman that is simple in this way and that doesn't need a professional life perhaps, or a stimulating life outside the home, or doesn't have like male ambitions or male desires for adventure. I don't know what. It's kind of like in Jane Eyre. If any of you have ever read Jane Eyre, she's working as a governess for this aristocratic guy. And she, because of her position, not only as a woman, but as a woman born into poverty, she's never had any experiences outside of the narrow confines of basically her, you could say like her county, so to speak, right? And she happens to reflect at one point, one night or something, she's standing on the veranda of this estate, and she's looking out and she's thinking about all of these adventures or all of these experiences and all of these things that she'll never see or do because of her status. And she says, why do men think that just because we are women that we too don't have a curiosity about the world, that we too don't have energies and powers that need to be exercised, that we too don't want experience, we too don't want freedom, etc. And I know that it's not an either or. I know that having children, being a housewife, even that it does not in the modern age preclude these things, particularly when you can stay at home now and you can do stuff like what I'm doing, right, and have kids around. But I know that my grandmother and my mother, who were both traditional, they were like old school trad women. I know that they while there were aspects of that were wonderful, and I thank them for the sacrifices that they made, I know that they wished that they had done some things differently and had made themselves that they had made themselves pursue other things as well. My grandmother, and by the way, grandparents are dead, so I can talk about this, and my mom doesn't care. She's talked about some of these things with me before, even on my show. But my grandmother was a farmer's wife, and my grandfather was a good man, and she was a stay-at-home mom when that was the common thing, and just the thing that women did. And she had 3 kids and so forth. And she, at some point, she asked my grandfather because she had stopped going to school when, as many women did, when she met her husband. And of course, she met him and married young, not like teenager, but like I believe like very early 20s. She gave up school, gave up any aspirations about that. Not that women even had those aspirations beyond like being a secretary back in those days for the most part, but she gave up those aspirations and was happy to do it and become a mom and a wife and all that. But at a certain point, she asked him if she could go back to school of some kind or get some training, maybe a real estate license, something like that. Like she expressed, even as old school and maternal as she was and traditional and all of that, this is like a Louisiana housewife, mid-century, mid-20th century, right? Conservative, all of those things. She asked him if she could basically start also pursuing a kind of professional life. And he told her she could not. And in those days, ladies, you asked your spouse for permission. I mean, even today, you know, we negotiate these things and that's fine. But he told her no, he wanted to have his woman at home full time, raising the kids and taking care of things for him and keeping up that side of things. And so she gave that up and did not pursue it. And do you want to know who ended up at the end of their lives regretting that? Do you want to know who regretted it? Yeah, my grandma regretted, I guess, to a degree. But do you want to know who really regretted it? My grandfather. And as he got to be older and as he saw the ways in which he realized he had stunted her existentially in some important ways, the ways that he had stunted her and that she had in a number of ways given up herself for him in a lot of ways, he felt bad about it. And he actually talked to us about it. And she had some problems in her life, like emotional problems. And he even said, I feel like my stunting her in that way, he didn't use these words, but he expressed that he felt like his stunting her in that way had contributed to some degree of emotional illness because she was so blocked in that respect, right? And sort of this was like the also the old Freudian idea of like hysteria, right? But anyway, I won't get into that. See, you can't break these things down into sound bites, can you? It just comes down to pro and against, and when in fact these are deeply complex things. And that's the problem. We can't have these conversations anyway. And my mom, y'all, I've talked about her before. She was a virgin when she got married. All she wanted was to have a traditional home life and have kids, and she waited for marriage, and she married a man that was desired by all these other people and thought to be like a man's man and all of that. And of course, my mom was a hardcore Christian and Southern Baptist tradition and valued marriage and traditional values and all that. So she got married, and it turns out, you know, my dad, he turned out to be a lot, let's put it this way, a lot more complicated than she had bargained for. And while she had, thank God, completed college, she suffered a great deal by not better developing the professional part of herself. And by being in her spirit and in her disposition so submissive, yes, to her husband. And of course, this is something that Erica Kirk has talked about. She's a big proponent of the biblical idea of submission, which again, she is entitled to be. But I guess, y'all, if I could come down to my point here, it's that I'm thinking ahead here. I'm not thinking just in the moment about this tragedy and about the grieving widow and about this memorial service, but I'm thinking about I guess it's condescending to say propaganda that's about to be pushed our way, but I'm thinking about what's going to be coming in the weeks and months to come in terms of they have a voice now. Erica Kirk is a very powerful woman now, and she's very influential, and she has a voice. And this side of things, you know, the right, they have the nation's ear, not everyone, but they have many people's ear and sympathy. And I just wish that it were not this rather extreme, I would say, on the whole, kind of regressive evangelical Christianity and this sort of militaristic, we can beat those liberals attitude. I wish it were not these two themes that were so dominant. And it seems like that's what has been happening the last several weeks. And I feel like this is just such a great opportunity window here for the right to have promoted many of its great ideas and its philosophy, and to stand up for free speech and things like this. And instead, it just seems to be like some problematic points of focus, in my humble opinion. And so my critique is not of Erica Kirk. It is simply this, that she is being promoted, and I imagine will promote herself, or promote at least the ideals of a very traditional 1950s evangelical or neo-trad vision of women, when in fact Erica Kirk herself and many conservative women are much more the exemplar of a feminist, a classical 60s feminist perspective. And I talked about this online, the idea of focusing initially on education. You know, she has a master's in law and she's working on her PhD in, I think, Christian studies. And, you know, it's not my cup of tea, but whatever, a PhD is a PhD. So she must value education, despite all of the stuff that conservatives and even people like me at times have said about how broken higher education is. She values an education. She got her education, and she has pursued for over a decade various entrepreneurial activities, which is great. You know, and she's had products that she has created, and then she's done some philanthropic work and created like philanthropic organizations. Like, this woman, she is a high achiever. She is an uber professional. She delayed getting married. Maybe, I understand, maybe she didn't meet the right person until she was 30, in her 30s, but she married when she was 31, and, you know, had her kids mid 30s. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that delaying marriage and childbirth, focusing on career, having a life and interest outside of the domestic sphere, and look, obviously being a well-spoken, dynamic, confident woman in the traditionally male sphere of politics, it's just laughable to say that this in any way supports this notion of traditional womanhood, that this is the death knell of feminism. And a number of people have been pointing it out. And I'm not saying, again, that I don't have big critiques of feminism, or that I don't absolutely despise the victim-oriented Me Too feminism of the modern age, because I do. But I have seen the dark side and the problematic aspect of a traditional woman's role as well. And I have firsthand experience of it. And I'm just saying, can we just be a little more reasoned, a little more temperate, a little more centrist in our approach to this? So that's my issue, Erica Kirk, and that whole thing. So, all right, y'all. I've been going, look, I always go longer than I say I will. Marilyn Manson, I need to, Dan Campbell, what's up? I'm glad you showed up. Dan Campbell says, Erica has been granted a gift. She's got a podium. Yes, look, this is an incredible, extraordinary moment in politics right now, in the sense that the politicians themselves are not center stage. Oh, can we talk about, shit. I know how to wake us all up. Y'all, and this is not like an anti-Trump rant or anything. Like I said, like, I supported him in 2 elections and all of that. Okay, I don't hate Trump or whatever. Most of the time I think he's funny. A lot of the time I agree with some stuff that he's done, not so much lately. But y'all, can I tell you, did you hear about this? The reaction to Trump at the memorial when he came on the stage and he joked around, or didn't joke around, or I don't know, but when he came on stage and he said that he, unlike Erica, he wouldn't forgive his enemies, he hates his enemies, he doesn't want the best for them. Did you know this? Apparently the stadium started clearing out. People did not want to hear that shit. And this is not liberal fake news. I just saw this on the O'Reilly report. So my guy watches, look, this is how exposed I am to stuff on the right? Like, I get it. But he watches some different podcasts, and he was watching Bill O'Reilly's online show. And he was interviewing someone from is it Newsmax? It is not a liberal left-wing news source, but he was interviewing someone who was there. I think it was from Newsmax. And this guy said that they were reporting this as well, but there's video of it, that when Trump started talking shit like that, that a bunch of people, like he said, like a third or a half of the stadium left. And he said that it was not well received, that people did not want to hear that shit. And to me, that's really interesting. And that's actually an impressive, reassuring thing to hear, that actually a lot of people were there. Most people were there, not for a political rally, not for extreme partisan pronouncements. They were there to actually memorialize this man and have a spiritual experience. And so I say that to say that it's really easy to get caught up in, for me as well, in social media and what people are saying, extremists are saying, or what people are saying for clicks and views. You know, when people like Matt Walsh and others get on to Twitter X and they basically put out almost a call to war, not a call to actual violence, but like a call to war, and all this Christian nationalism stuff and all of this, it's real easy for me as well to, and the same thing with stuff on the left, you know, people celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder and all that. It's real easy to think, man, it's just a lot of extremists, and it's just, we're in some kind of a cold war right now, when really I do still think most Americans, and this is what I was trying to say about the left earlier, and that we shouldn't caricature them as crazy murderers. Still, most people on both sides are reasonable centrist. Now, we can debate who has more of an extremist wing. I do think, yes, that there is research showing, my leftist friends, let me tell you, there is research showing that the extreme part of the left, it is bigger, it is larger than the extreme part of the right, statistically speaking. And that in general, on the left, these extremists have more extreme views. That having been said, it still leaves on both sides a majority of people who identify as left or right, left and right, a majority of people who identify as one or the other, who actually are not crazy, are not extremists, are not excusing violence or prone to violence. So to me, the fact that Trump actually, not only was he not the central focal point of this rally, of this memorial/rally, it was Erica Kirk who was the focal point, and the memory of Charlie Kirk. The fact that Trump was not the focal point, and not only that, but that he actually forced people to get up and leave, that almost half the stadium apparently cleared out because they didn't want to hear his shit either at that moment. That's reassuring. And so it's not that I can't take Trump's jokes. And again, like, I used to think that people on the left were just hysterical about everything that Trump would say, even when it was clear he was just trying to be outrageous and fuck with people, that the left would have panic attacks over it. And I still can let most of what Trump says roll off. But the problem is this now, and I don't think Donald Trump gets this. The problem now is that this murder of Charlie Kirk has ramped people's emotions, all of us in various ways, it's ramped them way up, and the rhetoric has been ramped way up on Twitter and YouTube and and everywhere, right? The rhetoric has been ramped up, and we need a leader to help bring the temperature down, or at least not to stoke the fires. And so while I think Trump's style worked better for a different era, maybe when, in 2016, we needed some pushback in this country against the excesses of the left and against some of their quote unquote craziness. We needed that correction, perhaps, but I feel like Trump is no longer what we need. And that's not a partisan thing for me. I just think that he does not recognize when the moment calls for something more tempered and less combative. But again, I know that a lot of people disagree with that. A lot of people on the right say, no, this is when you actually pounce on your enemy, and the left has been doing stuff to us for 15 years, and now we need to do it because they might come into power again. They'll do it to us and whatever. Yeah, that kind of back and forth, it doesn't get you anywhere. And the right cannot, quote, win this war. All that's going to happen is they're going to, with some of these excesses, they're going to make people start to get tired of them. And the pendulum can swing back so easily. And I think that's also what my anxiety is about, is that people think that they can take these measures and throw around some of this rhetoric, and things can't dramatically change, but they can. There are catalyzing events that people don't see coming. There are things that just cause a tectonic shift, and even the Charlie Kirk murder is an example of that, right? But things can shift again, or you can box yourself, conservatives could box themselves into a corner with some of their own rhetoric and ideas and measures, and they won't like it when perhaps some of them get caught in it. Now, that having been said, I do think Jimmy Kimmel is fucking annoying. I don't think it was right for the FCC chair, basically probably at Trump's insistence, due to Trump's pressure. I don't think it was right for him to get online and explicitly threaten the stations, networks running the Jimmy Kimmel show. I don't think that was right. However, that having been said, Jimmy Kimmel, let me just say this now. Some of you on the right are going to like this. Jimmy Kimmel and a bunch of you others, Stephen Colbert, Howard Stern, the list goes on and on and on. You guys, you need to understand. You think that you are in the cool group, and that you and the cool people are looking at a bunch of like stupid hicks or crazy religious nuts and all of that. And you think that that is what the right is. And you think that when you make these jokes and when you exhibit blatant bias in your monologues and in your comments, you think that's great because you're in the cool crowd and you're appealing to the cool crowd, and it's fun and it's cool just to laugh at those Republicans over there. You need to wake up and realize, guys, you are not in the cool crowd. You are in a crowd of endangered species. And I don't mean that literally in terms of any violence, in no insinuations of violence. But you guys are not in the cool crowd. You are now hated by many people. And you need to get out of your echo chambers. If you think what you're doing with your comments and your jokes and your obvious bias, if you think that you're doing a service to the truth because you know the truth and the truth isn't what those crazy MAGA people believe, and you need to help enlighten the world to the truth through your art, through your jokes, through your monologues, if you really think that, you need to get out of your echo chambers, because the people on the right have a lot of legitimate points. There's a reason I call myself right of center, because on the whole, the people on the right have a lot of legitimate points. And a number of you just immediately popped off on this idea on the left that this shooter, Tyler Robinson, that he had to be right-wing and MAGA because his dad was, his family was, or they liked guns or whatever. And so someone like Jimmy Kimmel, he's so ensconced in his own echo chamber in the cool kids room that he doesn't even bother to look seriously at contrary assertions. And so these people were caught flat-footed, so to speak, when it came out that no, the guy actually had a transgender lover and was in these left-wing chat groups and was into furry porn and all of this stuff like that. And you persisted, and I'm talking to the left and Jimmy Kimmel and people like you persisted in your false belief or in your willful blindness to other information out of your own political bias. So you need to realize that it's going to be in the future, it's not going to be a matter just of the government threatening you, that because the political mood in this country has changed, people just don't want to hear from you anymore. They're sick of your shit. They're sick of your propaganda. You think Trump is the one, the right are the ones putting out the propaganda, but you and Colbert and Howard Stern and a bunch of others have been putting out all kinds of wild, incorrect propaganda for years and years. And the way that a number of you acted with the whole COVID thing, look, the left needs to understand that whole COVID episode where people were forced to stay in their homes, where their movement was restricted, where they were fired or suspended or suffered professional consequences if they didn't inject a new cutting edge pharmaceutical into their bodies. You think that the destruction of tons of businesses, particularly small businesses, you think that the destruction of these It's just a blip, just a nothing. And in a number of cases, people getting fired for expressing contrarian views on COVID restrictions, on COVID policy, on the shot, all of that. People, especially in some other countries, getting arrested at protest just for protesting, just for even walking outside their home. You think, a number of you on the left, you think that all of that was just a blip? That was nothing? That's hardcore repression. Repressing freedom of movement and forcing people basically to inject something into their bodies that they don't want. It does not get, hear me now, on the left, it does not get any more repressive than that. And I know that you had, most of you, good intentions. I know you didn't think it was just an authoritarian power play, but you should have paid attention to half of your fellow citizens. You should have paid more attention to the pain people were going through. You should have looked at the contrarian science. You should have looked at the flaws in your own science. And you should have stopped it. You should have stopped it. And I understand that there were a number on the right who initially with COVID, including Trump, were supporting a number of these abridgments of freedom. And look, one of the things that I dislike most about Trump and his 2 tenures in office was the fact that I think he really just flailed around when it came to COVID and was completely inconsistent. But it did, early on, it did become clear that those on the right had a different philosophy than the left and were a lot more skeptical of COVID policy and COVID science, quote, and the vaccine and all of that. And it did pretty quickly become an issue of the left being much more authoritarian than the right. People, and even at the level of societal, interpersonal repression, the fact that people did not feel comfortable expressing their views about COVID or the shot or these things without being told that they were murderers. Oh, you're murdering people if you don't get the shot. Some of you, a number of you on the left, you got so swept up in emotion, just like people on the right are getting swept up in emotion now to a degree about this Charlie Kirk thing. You got so swept up in emotion that you became totalitarian, or at least a number of you in your views and in what you supported. So there's a reaction. There is a thesis in a Hegelian sense. The philosopher Hegel talked about how basically there's a thesis and an antithesis. And so you have an action taken by someone, by a party, by a side, by a nation state, what have you, and then it creates a reaction in the other, and then they act, and it's back and forth. It's a cyclical phenomenon. And I say that just to remind everyone that history has cycles, and that the side that you're on, if you are in power, whether you're in the left or the right, you should really take care with how you think about that power, how you exert that power, and how you treat those not in power, because you are sowing the seeds for your enemies. You are sowing the seeds of your future enemies. And so I know a number of you on the left think that things in a number of ways have gotten scarily repressive, whether we're talking about free speech or we're talking about Trump sending the National Guard into cities, certain left cities, on the pretext of crime problems. I don't want to even go down that road, get into that. My point is to say, I know you on the left feel like things have gotten really totalitarian and repressive. And I would say, let this be a lesson to you that there is a kind of phenomenal and emotional blowback or response or reaction that people have when they feel like they have been oppressed, repressed, suppressed by a totalitarian power and by a totalitarian way of thinking. And that doesn't even get into all the other cancel culture stuff of all of the people, celebrities, artists, what have you, who have been canceled and professionally ended over the last 15 years for varying degrees of ridiculous or minor infractions because they violated some leftist ideology. All of that is not without consequence. And that doesn't mean that it's now okay for the right to do some version of it or to just give in to their worst impulses. But the left needs to learn a lesson and take this as an example. So I'm going to come back for anyone who still wants to be here. Oh, we're up to 9. We're up to 9. Look, I always go later than I say I will. But hopefully I can get some good stuff out of that. I think that's enough for me to get a couple of videos once I edit all of the all the stumbling around and ums and uhs and all that. So I'm going to come back in 5 minutes, and it will be short because I'm just going to be talking about some Marilyn Manson updates, and then we'll go. But I'll come back in 5 minutes, and I'll see you then. That was not meant to be taken lasciviously, but I did. I was talking to him about something. So he has somebody, a repairman, coming over tomorrow. Some long, not so long, I guess, but boring story about maintenance. So I won't get into it. But we were conferring about time and everything. So what's up? Let me read your comments real quick, and then I'm going to talk Manson. Since I only have 5 to 9 of you at any given time, I don't think I have an excuse for not reading the comments this time. Do I? Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell says that he isn't, well, not here, but he's told me that he's going to look for more ways to annoy me on streams than he already has. Have you thought about ways to do that, Dan Campbell? Okay, so, oh, what's up, Mark? I have not talked to you in a bit. He says, I thought Erica is Roman Catholic. Am I wrong? Yeah, so you're not wrong. She is, and I didn't mean to give that impression on the denomination thing that she was a Protestant when I said evangelical, but she is, from what I can gather, having looked into her and watched what I've watched, again, not by far not an extensive library of viewing. And so I may be missing out on a lot of things. But she is that kind of Catholic, though, who is, I think, who is in a lot of ways who has some recognizable evangelical traits, and has a very, I mean, you're a religion professor, so you'd be able to describe this a lot more than I would. But I don't think I don't think she's like the sort of kind of how do we put this, like unemotional sort of tradition oriented, ritual oriented Catholic who is not who doesn't have this evangelical idea of like a relationship with God and that sort of thing. The impression that I get is that she shares a lot more, I think, shares a lot with evangelical Protestants in her perspective and even like her religious outlook. But again, it's something that I could be off the mark about. And I'm going again by some shows that I've seen of her where she's also talking about, for instance, the importance of submission in marriage. And to me, it sounded very, very like identical, really, to the stuff that I heard growing up in the Baptist church, and that my father would often recite to my mom to justify why she had no voice in their marriage. That having been said, there is, you know this, Mark, you very well, and I do want to, in fairness to Erica, since I'm talking about submission, I do want to acknowledge that she did take care to also bring up the next verse, which that comes after in the Bible, and that comes after the verse on submission, where it says, yes, wives submit to your husbands, but then husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church. And this is something that growing up in a Southern Baptist church, people emphasized a lot to try to justify or explain the idea of biblical submission to the husband. They would point to the verse that comes after that second part, and they would say, but look, the Bible also says, the apostle also says that you should, that men should love their wives as Christ loved the church, giving himself up for her, self-sacrifice, right? And so what they would say is that actually the New Testament is demanding more of men than it is even demanding of the women, because it's demanding that the husband actually sacrifice themselves for the woman, right? Metaphorically or actually. Whereas to women, it just says, submit to your husband's leadership, submit to his decisions and his perspectives. Now, the problem with that I saw growing up in the church among people who believed in submission and practiced it is that in practice, it becomes, in my view, it really just becomes a way for husbands to dominate women in traditional marriage. And while I'm sure not everyone practices it that way, and it seems like by all accounts, Charlie Kirk was a phenomenal husband. I have no doubt about that or any part of Erica's story. I really don't. He seemed like a phenomenal husband and someone that a woman would feel, I could see, completely safe in giving that and delegating that leadership role to him, right, so to speak, or conferring that to him. But my experience was that this is not how typically that doctrine was used, and that this was really a way that women were told that they could not have an equal voice in the decisions made in the marriage and all kinds of things, right? So again, just my perspective. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. We should do a show. You know, you're always welcome. We should do a show though and talk about some of this stuff. Dan Kimball says, "Oh yeah, I got you, Dan. Yeah, she's been granted a huge gift. Agreed." Daniela says, "Absolutely complex things. It is not black or white. Unfortunately, many social conversations, especially on social media, are reduced to that." Yep, yep. Yeah, I know, Dan. It'll be short. So let me get to the final thing. Then let's talk Marilyn Manson. So I think, oops. What I think is so fascinating about what's been going on with Marilyn Manson in recent months is the way that while he himself has not given an interview, he's not given the media or anyone any fodder at all for talking about him, much less freaking out about him, that still he has generated so many instances, really interesting instances of protest, instances. Basically, he's generated without giving interviews or doing anything, but just going around and giving great performances. He seems to still have generated or attracted this outcry, this controversial outcry, at least from the usual suspects, extremists, protesters, and people with political axes to grind. But we saw this in the UK, and I just did a video on it. I put out a promo, like a tongue-in-cheek promo ad about the horror of Marilyn Manson coming to the UK. But there were shows, the activist got one of his shows canceled, and even got some politicians to go on record as saying that they were very concerned. They were very appalled that Marilyn Manson was being allowed to perform in their district, right? And so there was really quite a controversy in the UK about him. Now he's about to start his tour there, and it will be interesting to see if there are protests and what happens. But there have been people in Europe, I believe in Germany, when he was doing a show there in Berlin, there were left-wing protesters. There were some left-wing protesters that defaced some property and that posted anti-Manson posters and flyers prior to his performance, the day before his performance. But I don't know. We will see. But definitely, I mean, if the guy is still having shows canceled, it's really hard to say that he is not relevant. I know that some of his detractors like to slur him with the label has been, but there is nothing has been about a guy who is in the news this much, and he hasn't even done an interview. He's like, in every way, Marilyn Manson is laying low. Let me say it again. In every way, Marilyn Manson, he is lying low. And yet he is generating and attracting, even after the LADA announced there would be no charges, even after so many of those women who accused him, his accusers have been proven to be demonstrated. It's been demonstrated that his accusers are full of shit. People have moved on. They're tired of Me Too, all of that. And yet he is still, even with that, he is generating still so much controversy. It's really interesting to see. And again, it is not just in the UK because, and here's where I think it gets even more interesting. Mexico, you had a situation there where you have a mayor, and I'm going to show you some video of this guy in a second. Now I'm telling you this story because at the end, there's an ending to this story that you may be surprised by. The mayor of one of the, I'm sorry, I should say this, the governor, not the mayor, the governor of a major state in Mexico personally invited Manson to come and perform at a state fair that he was trying to promote. In other words, this governor really wanted to get a lot of attention on his state fair. and bring a lot of industry and interest into his state. And so he invited someone who would be controversial. Apparently, it was between Manson or Metallica that this Mexican mayor was deliberating between asking Manson or Metallica to come to this concert, this festival, state fair, this concert that they were holding. And so the invitation was given and it was set up and planned. Manson was going to perform there. And guess what? This time you had a Mexican cardinal, a cardinal in the Catholic Church, who spoke out against the sinfulness of this and how appalling it was that Manson was going to be performing. And there were even reports of a handful of people staging a hunger strike or threatening to stage a hunger strike. I'm not sure which is the case there. And there were photos of protesters standing outside. There was a petition. They got signatures. Again, like probably not many, but this made the news. This was big news, both there in Mexico and internationally. And so this governor was getting all of this blowback, and he very bravely responded and he said, nope, we're not canceling him because we've done this before. This state canceled an invitation to Black Sabbath, to Ozzy. This happened years ago, apparently, that the same Mexican state had canceled their invitation to Ozzy and Black Sabbath. There was a concert that was supposed to occur. It was canceled. And he said, we're not doing that again. We are having this artist, Marilyn Manson, come to this. He's going to do this performance in the name of cultural fairness. In other words, he said that people in his state have the right to enjoy culturally relevant, edgy artists. He put it like that. And I loved it because basically what this guy was doing was he was making a stand for, you guessed it, free speech and artistic expression, and also for presumption of innocence. What he was basically saying is, we don't go by rumor here. We don't go by allegations. There's nothing on the books officially against this guy. No charges, no trial, nothing. So we're going to have this artist here. We're not going to deny, he said, we're not going to deny our citizens their right to cultural experiences. I love it. It was great. And I don't know what his motives were. Some people were saying, oh, he's actually a metalhead fan, a Manson fan. Some were saying, oh, he's a man of principle. Some were saying, oh, he's just doing this out of political and financial expediency because he knows it'll bring a lot of interest and to him and this festival. I don't know what the case is, but whatever. It was great to see a guy with some balls. And what's funny is he actually met Manson. This is what I wanted to, this was the story I wanted to get to, because I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm not making fun of Manson. I'm not making fun of the governor. I think that what the governor did was absolutely ballsy and whatever, but it was kind of a humorous thing to see video. The governor met Manson at the airport. He met him as he was coming in. He had like basically a sort of a welcome waiting for him. You know how when you arrive somewhere, like if it's a business trip or you're meeting maybe a relative or something, that people will stand there as the arrivals come out. And even some people might have signs, you might have like a driver meeting you there or something, right? Manson had the governor of a state in Mexico as his welcome party, his arrival party. I mean, I love it. I'm so not making fun of it. It just tickles me. It tickles me that this dude, whether because he's the governor of Mexico, whether because and I'm going to show you in a minute, but whether because he is a Manson fan or he's standing on principle or he's completely self-interested and wants to be seen being cool and hanging out with this rock star, I don't know, but whatever his reason was, this dude was clearly, you'll see in the video, he was clearly excited to be there. And he was dressed in a like leather looking jacket. Like he was not dressed in a suit either, y'all. This is what's funny. I'll show you in a second again, and I'll edit it, into the final video. But he was not dressed in a suit or anything official. He had on a t-shirt and some jeans, and he had on like a edgy looking like leather type jacket and a cap. Like he was trying to look cool, not in a pretentious way, but like he was trying to look cool. And then you'll see in the video, he has one of the girls that's with him, like women working. There was some girls working at the airport, like basically airport employees. I don't know, or maybe one of his employees. But he waves then he meets Manson, and then he waves at one of these girls to bring a gift that they had for Manson, and I don't know what it was. I'm sure it was cool, whatever it was, but it was funny. It was kind of almost like awkward because you could see that, like, I don't think Manson knew exactly what to make of it or like how to react because, well, you'll see in a second. Again, not making fun of anybody. It was heartwarming, and it was cool as hell. And then at one point, we can't hear what he's saying, unfortunately, but at one point, the governor, as he's talking to Manson, he even puts his hand on his heart, and he, like, you can see that he's really trying to express his heartfelt admiration for Manson and his pleasure at having him visit his state, his state fair. Let me go away just for 30 seconds and see if I can dig this up. I want you to see it. Okay, I did find it. All right, so I'm going to share the screen. There is no volume, and the person who took the video has just set it to the beautiful people, the Manson song, and if I play it, I might get a copyright nick here on this. So I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. But the point is, we don't have the actual audio, so you can just look at the visuals. But yeah, this is him meeting him at this, like, kind of small scale impromptu reception. I think at the airport. As Manson. Well, no, I guess not at the airport because Manson is decked out in his full gear, his full costume. So actually, it must have been at some kind of an event, maybe right before or right after his concert. So I'll have to go in and edit that out. But the guy took time. The guy took time to meet him at this reception, basically this impromptu reception here. So let's see if I can share. Okay. Thanks to Marilyn Manson Gallery for this. So I'm just going to play it here. This is the dude. Oh, can you see this? Yeah. Make it bigger. Here. I'm going to play it one more time. So he walks up and shakes his hand, and then he gets this gift. Yeah. Here we go. I don't know what it is. I should find out, or someone will know in the comments when I post the video, the edited video. Look at him holding his heart there. He's holding his heart. Anyway, so look, I thought that was cool. And here's the coolest thing is that they're taking a picture together. So here's what's cool then is when Manson, and some of you know this, when Manson actually did perform at this festival, his performance drew a crowd of 200,000 people. Now, I'm not talking about 200,000 people just attending the state fair in general. I'm saying that 200,000 people were in the audience for that performance. And that's bigger than what Taylor Swift gets. I mean, that's fucking huge. I think that's actually the attendance that was projected at the Charlie Kirk Memorial, for example. And of course, you could see how huge that was, right? So that is absolutely huge. Manson is huge in Mexico. And the excitement and fervor that people have for him there is just contagious. And when I went to that concert, I've been to several Manson concerts now. I've covered several Manson concerts. I covered his first one, his comeback. And I covered the one where the protesters showed up. I did that video confronting them. And then I covered another couple of them when he came through Texas. Anyway, but the one in Mexico, it was a whole other level in terms of the crowd enthusiasm. It just, the energy, the excitement, the number of people singing along, just the screaming, people climbing on other people's shoulders, standing on people's shoulders just to get a better view of him and connect with him. It was really, really powerful. And so I can totally imagine having witnessed that and the enthusiasm and the fervor among Mexican audiences for him. can totally see how 200,000 people would show up for that. So that was really cool. That was really interesting. That whole episode with him and with what Manson was generating there. And these things, look, these things make him just more interesting as an artist and more relevant and all of that. These are good things. I know the Me Too thing, I know that was hell. It really sucked. And he's still going through it with a couple of these crazies and their dumb lawsuits, right? But it is really interesting as an artist. I think that will be a huge part of his enduring legacy and how even in the future people will view him, future generations, is this idea of an artist that from the 90s on was always generating a conversation and a cultural moment, so to speak. So what is the latest? I want to end on talking about Manson. I want to talk about something new, okay? Because I'm about to get catty. All right. I've been holding it back. We talked, I was watching my words. We talked about the politics, watching my words. We talked about Eric Kirk, watching my words about, certain things. But I want to get catty. I want to talk about an idiot. I want to talk about a spineless idiot. Spineless. I'm talking about Chloe Sevigny. Am I saying her name right? I don't want to look it up. I don't even want to give it that time. Chloe Sevigny. Here, I'll give you a picture in case you might not know. Some of you know this controversy. So this is what happened. Oh. I don't know what that is on the side. Hope it's not something bad. All right, so this is what happened. This actress, major actress, even if you don't remember offhand or sorry. Even if you don't know what you know her from, you've seen her, major actress. And she used to be considered edgy, like when she did Kids, that was what her debut, her first movie actually was in that edgy, controversial film in the 90s. But she went to a party apparently, or it was a museum, it was maybe an art exhibit. But she went to an event, an artistic event, and she ran into Marilyn Manson. He was with a mutual friend of hers and a director or something like that. And she took a picture with Manson, a couple of pictures, not just with him, but with the other guys in the group, the other guys who were there. But she took some pictures, a couple of pictures, playful. One of them, she has her tongue. I'll show it in a minute. One of them, she has her tongue stuck out and is pretending like stick it out at Manson, whatever. And she posts them on her IG. She posts them in her stories. And it's not like, y'all, it caused some big outcry, okay? Nobody was calling for a Chloe Sevigny boycott. Nobody was calling for any kind of retribution or social excommunication or anything. She just got literally a few whining responses from people on Instagram saying the usual whining shit that anonymous whiners that we don't know often say. I'm so disappointed. My personal favorite, I've followed you for years. I've always been a fan, but now I'm going to have to unfollow you. Oh, it's too bad. And instead of doing what I do and just telling them to fuck off, or instead of rationally understanding that, look, these are just a few jerks, a few extremists on Twitter or on Instagram. This has no bearing on anything. What does she do? She totally not only caves, but she seems to engage in some kind of struggle session where she basically runs at the mouth talking about how she was a bad girl and I'm never going to do it again and I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. Let's just see what this People article says. So Chloe Sevigny addresses candid photos with Marilyn Manson. Quote, I deeply regret the lapse in judgment. Oh, yes. Such a lapse in judgment. It's huge lapse in judgment there. Chloe Sevigny is addressing pictures she recently took with rocker Marilyn Manson after posting a photo of herself and the controversial musician on her Instagram stories and receiving backlash from fans. The Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story star, yeah, she was the mom, Kitty, in the Menendez show. She apologized. The pictures that were posted and then deleted per the Daily Beast, oh yeah, we're all reporting on this, such a big story, depicted Sevigny and her husband, art gallery director, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry, posing with Manson and director Jonas, I guess, Ackerland. Another featured Savigny appearing to lick Manson's face. Can we see the pictures here? Am I going to have to go to another site to show you the pictures? Per the Daily Beast, it said. The Daily Beast going to show us the pictures? Ah, here we go. All right. Can y'all see that? Let me make it bigger. Okay. So these are the offending pictures here. One of them, she's kind of leaning into him. He's got his arm around her. He looks good in these photos. Then the other one, these two dudes, they got funny expressions while she's pretending to lick him and he's smiling. All right, yeah. And so this was where then she basically totally caved and had like a mini struggle session here for this nobody, no named fan here. So this fan supposedly says, why? Just why? You don't need Manson by your side. That's gross. That's gross. By the way, gross, I've noticed this with the Me Too stuff, especially. Gross is a term that people like to use when they can't think of something actually like tangible or significant to say about someone as far as insults. Oh, he's gross. He's creepy. And then she says, uh-oh, what is this? I don't care about this. And then she says this, she says, I'm truly sorry. You're absolutely right. We unexpectedly, by the way, I would never plan a meeting with Marilyn Manson. We unexpectedly ran into MM and Jonas in the lobby of a hotel. We're fans of Jonas as both a musician and a filmmaker. And in the moment, I love this part, y'all. I love this part. In the moment, I wasn't thinking clearly. I'd had too much to drink. I'd had too much to drink. Oh, it was such a huge drunken mistake. I had too much to drink and didn't consider how inappropriate or hurtful it might be to be photographed with Marilyn Manson. I deeply regret the lapse in judgment. Well, listen, Chloe, I just have something to say to you. All right? Just have something to say. You can rest easy, my dear, because according to modern victim Me Too feminism, when a woman ingests alcohol, then everyone knows that she loses all capacity for reason and cannot be held responsible for anything that she does. So the fact that you were drunk means that they can't hold it against you. You win. You win, lady. Gosh, imagine being worth millions of dollars and having all of this prestige and power and all of that and just groveling to a no-named nobody like that. And like that, not just an apology and acknowledgement, just absolute utter groveling. That, by the way, is how terrified the left has made people. When we talk about free speech, how terrified the left has made people who don't fall in line with orthodoxy, that you've got, even now, you've got this actress feeling like she has to completely kneel down, prostrate herself in front of this no-named nobody who's whining over nothing. That is why so many on the right feel like they need some vengeance, because so many of us, even so many people on the left, are sick of living this way. And look, like I said, it's the people. It's often the people who initiate counterculture. It's often the people who initiate cancel culture that end up suffering for it. Chloe Savigny. Anyways, I thought that was interesting, and so I don't know. Let's see if she said anything else about it. Go back to the article. Fans saying this Marilyn Manson post is a disappointment, sis. Unfollowed. Oh yeah, and they put that. Oh, you can't see it. I'm sorry. I'll show you one more thing and then let you go to bed. But look here. This is another comment that she apparently got. The Marilyn Manson post is a disappointment, sis. Unfollowed. Another wrote, I really admire you, but I'm so disappointed that you have spent time with Marilyn Manson. So disappointed. Oh my God. Anyway, look, y'all, not only is Manson back, not only is he back, he's having a very successful tour. He's putting out great music. It's being well received. He's doing dynamite collaborations with people like Ronnie Radke. I mean, that video that they did, God is a Weapon, it's gotten like what, over 10 million views on YouTube. And he's generating all this controversy. It's really interesting to see. So, what else? What else? I guess that's all for now. Everybody, thank you. Good night. And catch the real videos when I bring them out tonight, tomorrow. Bye.